We got, yeah, I got it. Somebody needs-
Who wants to do it?
Who's the bunch?
Dan, and he's gone.
Oh,
Somebody else want to be secretary? Do you want to join me?
We're ready, guys.
Okay, we're deciding who's going to be secretary.
I'd like to call the May 23rd, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Acting Secretary, would you please call roll?
Jay Alms,
Here.
Jim Hankins here, Shane Klinger,
Here.
Scott Heidemann, Dan Fluger, Jody Stromberg,
Here.
John Danielewicz.
Here. We have a quorum. We'll continue. Everyone should have received the minutes from April 25th. Any additions or corrections? No. Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Communications? None?
I have none, just that the applicant for our first special use permit for the outdoor storage item has requested that that be tabled.
Okay. Item 5 tabled at the request of the applicant. Item 6. Variance from freestanding sign base and area regulations for property at 9400 North 2nd Street. Would you like it? Anybody here to speak on that? Or? Oh, this is not common.
I was going to text him since I actually have his cell phone. But
Yeah, I got a cell too.
I didn't reach out to him today, but when he applied, I gave him the scheduled meetings.
Can we just move on and do the other while we're waiting? Or did you text him?
I sent it. I just happened to have it because he's still working in our office.
Okay. You okay with just skipping it and then we'll just move on and then come back if you, or do we want to,
You certainly can do that.
we want to vote on it or discuss it? Let's give it a little time. Maybe he'll, because he's just around the corner. So,
Okay.
item 7, text amendment to zoning code amending regulations for wind operated energy devices. Carrie, can you fill us in on that?
Yep, a resident had inquired about installing a roof-mounted wind turbine on his home. However, our code classifies all wind-operated energy devices as something that is only allowed on parcels that are at least 2.5 acres in size and would require a special use permit on most lots unless they're zoned agricultural. Clearly, this code was written this way when all wind turbines were on tall poles, and now it makes sense to amend the code to allow these smaller roof-mounted wind turbines. We're not messing with the part of the code that I just referenced, but we are proposing adding a new use category to the code for wind-operated energy devices roof-mounted for on-site power supply only. And we suggest making this a permitted use in all of our zoning districts except for the mobile home district. But there would be use criteria that these turbines would need to comply with that would be added to the code as well. One roof-mounted wind turbine is allowed per parcel only if it supplies electrical power solely for on-site use. The turbine structure with supports shall not be more than 8 feet in height. And also the turbine upon the roof shall not extend taller than the maximum height allowed for principal structures in that zoning district in which the parcel is located. In R1 zoning, that would be 35 feet tall, for instance. On a vertical axis turbine, which is one that kind of spins this way, height shall be measured at the tallest point. On a horizontal axis turbine, which is more of a windmill, height shall be measured at the highest extended blade tip. All turbine equipment shall have a flat finish and shall not have any lighting attached to or projected onto it, and an electrical building permit shall be applied for and issued prior to installation of any of these roof-mounted turbine equipment.
Okay. Discussion?
I think I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
One is, this would the way it's written, would not allow a ground mounted.
No, this new use category would just be for roof mounted. The ground mounted would still have to have the 2.5 acres and a special use permit if you're not zoned ag.
Okay, and the other question, I guess, goes to, say you've got a little 5-acre farmette and you've got a windmill out there that normally would pump water.
Mhm.
And you decide that you don't need to pump water anymore, but
Like
you'd
a-
like to
just a
pump some
decorative
electricity,
thing?
convert it. That would probably
Oh.
exceed our height.
Oh, to convert
Yeah, to convert it to a,
decommissioned wind.
yeah, you
windmill?
already got a windmill. All you do is change the hardware out and add wires and you've got a wind generator.
I would think that we wouldn't allow that. We wouldn't issue permits for that.
Okay,
They can, I mean, if they wanted to build a newer structure and bring it all up to code, that would be something we'd address. But
Wouldn't that require special use, Carrie? Like if you wanted to have
if you, for the
the tall.
one, yeah, on the ground.
I'm just wondering if it should have a building inspection as well. Can it support it? Can it, instead of just the electrical? We want to make sure that, because people do their own additions, their own, so, I mean, it probably wouldn't take much,
Mhm.
but I think it should have some kind of structural integrity
Like before we even issue a permit?
along with the electrical,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? So it's got to be,
So a structural
yeah,
permit in addition to the electrical permit.
Pretty sure that's built into the building code already, that you have to
Okay.
have, wind loads have to be met. It's like any other appurtenance you put on your roof. So I think it's already there.
What about for electrical storage? Does this do anything to, since it's only for on-prem, the single premises, does this, or do we have another code existing out there to allow on-site storage of electricity to feed in
What
during
I've-
low times?
What I've found in researching the roof mounted turbines on the market, they don't really generate enough power
Mhm.
to have anything that you need to store. That's what I found. They don't really have batteries. They just kind of supplement your electric bill.
and I've heard too, the battery part is very expensive, and it also requires more permitting, I think, as well, so.
The electrical code does address that.
It does,
If
okay.
you want to have storage, but it's very expensive.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that it was covered somewhere for anybody that may want to do it. Okay, thank you.
Do we need a motion or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
motion,
just
yeah,
discussion.
this will be an
Text
ordinance and
amendment.
discussion, I mean, but you've had discussion.
Okay.
From a findings standpoint, generally, we don't do findings on a text amendment like
Right.
this. Plus the findings, the 6 findings of facts relate specifically to SUP and variance.
Okay, is there a motion on the floor to accept the amended regulations for wind-operated energy devices?
Motion to approve?
Second,
Second.
discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, Mr. Secretary?
Scott Heidemann, Jay Alms,
Yes.
Dan Fluger, Jim Hankins is a yes. Shane Klinger,
Yes.
Jody Stromberg,
Yes.
John Danielewicz.
Yes.
5 yes, 2 absent.
Passes with a positive recommendation. I can go back to item 6. We got notice that he will not be here, so we can talk about it, or we can lay it over, or I don't know what kind of time frame he has.
Yeah, he appears to not have realized it was tonight.
Oh.
Didn't write it down or didn't.
Okay.
Here's what I said, are you planning to come to planning and zoning commission tonight? Is that tonight? Yes, now, I cannot make it. I said, okay.
Well, as far as whether there's an urgent timeline, the sign is already there.
Well, that was, that was one of my thoughts, but
Yeah.
lay it over or go forward, I don't know.
I would suggest you proceed unless you have a reason to have him here. So maybe it can be handled in the discussion tonight.
It has a positive staff record, I don't know.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the,
We might as well hear the staff report.
oh yeah, I'm sorry. Gary? Fill us in.
This is a sign that actually fronts Harlem Road, just west of Scott Lane, even though it does have a Scott address. It was originally constructed back before the village was incorporated, and it was a legally established non-conforming sign when Mr. Trickey bought the property last year because it did not have the enclosed masonry base that our code now requires. Mr. Trickey and his sign contractor were told that new faces could be installed in those sign cabinets, but any structural changes to the sign would require that the entire sign be made compliant with our current regulations. There was miscommunication or misunderstanding, and the sign contractor ended up removing 2 cabinets and installing a new, larger cabinet on the lower portion of the sign without getting permits first. When we saw this work taking place, our enforcement inspector went out there, told them to stop work and apply for a sign permit. They continued to finish installation of this new cabinet. And then they applied for the building permit. However, I could not approve the sign permit because it does not comply with our regulations. It does not have that enclosed masonry base, and now it is too large. Multi-tenant freestanding signs can be up to 15 feet tall, but the sign area still cannot be larger than 100 square feet. This sign is 142 square feet. Now, after the fact, this variance has been applied for to allow the sign to stay. And it's disappointing that this work commenced before permits were issued. We work with Mr. Trickey regularly, and I work with the sign contractor regularly, and I think they should have known better. However, staff is recommending approval of this variance because the finished sign is not out of character for this area. It's an improvement compared to the old sign. We like that the tenants that face Scott Lane actually get signage on Harlem so people know that they're in there. And even with the larger sign, plus all the wall-mounted signs that they have there, which are all pretty much all new, on this entire property, this does not exceed the total signage allowed for the entire property because it has so much frontage, and sign area allowed is based on road frontage, and being on a corner, they could actually have more signage than it's just the freestanding sign that is too large. So we do recommend approval. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there any-
Is there,
If you have questions for staff,
yeah. Is anybody here to talk about the sign for Scott Lane?
is there anybody on the signage sheets?
No, nobody was on the way in.
They just had some trouble hearing what your summary of the sign was. I just put it up on it. Maybe you could just kind of explain. They just want to know what's being.
Yeah, you may have noticed the sign has already been changed. The sign
That's the existing sign on the Harlem Road? the
Yeah.
big sign?
Yeah, it's already been changed. It already has that bigger cabinet on the lower part. They did that without permits, and we couldn't approve it because it was too big and it doesn't have the proper base.
But so what's there is what's there.
Yeah, what's
They're
there,
not-
they
they're
just
not
want to
asking
keep
do
it.
anything more than what's there right now.
I see, okay.
Yeah, if they were to get denied, then they would have to change it, but they aren't. What they've applied to do is already what's built.
So the only concern was in the base of the sign?
The base and the total area of that sign is now bigger than our code would allow.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
I guess I'll do a motion. Unless they want.
Is there a motion on the floor for the variance?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And a second? And a second?
Second.
Discussion. Can we not, he's not planning on doing a masonry base then?
He has mentioned that he may do that in the future. He wanted to make sure that if this was approved, he could still possibly do that in the future. And I said, yeah, he could bring his sign more into conformity, but,
Yeah, I think that would be
but this
a
just
concession.
would make it okay in the time being.
This is what you're being asked about.
Yeah, he's mentioned that he may put the masonry base there later, but there's no guarantee of that, and that's not what's being considered.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I thought that was.
So I have
part
a
of
question. You said there's room for other signage, like maybe on the building. If they change any of that, will they have to bring this into?
No,
up to
like,
code?
he has the new tenant signs
Mm-hmm.
facing Scott. Those are relatively small. Each of those could have been a little bigger. If
Okay,
you wanted to change those or any of the other wall-mounted signs, as long as they didn't exceed what's allowed on that
Okay.
building, they could do that without it affecting the sign at all.
okay. So the only way this will be brought up to code is if he changes this one again. Excuse me. Okay.
Yeah, you would have to have the masonry base. We don't allow exposed poles like that.
Right,
It should
right.
have a masonry base that's at least 80% the width of the sign, so it's not a skinny little masonry base. And the sign, like with that bigger portion at the bottom, it now is too big. I'm not sure what the square footage was before.
Mhm.
I have a picture in your packets, but I don't know what the dimensions of those signs on each side were. It may have already been over 100 square feet. I'm not sure.
About another third. Yes,
I live in that neighborhood and I've driven by that sign for better than 30 years. And I really like what Mr. Tricky has done with the property. The Food Mart sign has been there for a long time. Fundamentally, I don't see any difference between what he has done, including the size, with the group signs that we have up along 173.
Mhm.
And I think since the property's front on Scott Lane rather than Harlem Road, I think it's probably an addition to the businesses there. So I could forgive the height, I could forgive the square footage, I could forgive everything else and vote in favor of the variance, but the monument base bothers me. There's nothing that I see that would prevent him from adding a decorative base to that sign and making it compliant.
any other comments? I agree with Jim. I think it would definitely be an improvement to it. But I guess we're just talking size here now, but
Well,
it's sign based, so-
It's for the whole thing.
Yeah,
it's Yeah, for- okay.
If you're approving this, you're approving that.
can we add an amendment? Or what do you call it, stipulation? Or can we not do that on a
If you
variance?
wanted to add a condition.
A condition,
that-
that's all.
I think you could add a condition that if the consensus is that you're okay with the area, but you want to add a condition that he does need to bring the base into conformity. That's a motion that could be made.
Who made the motion?
Mr. Chairman, can I just offer something just
Yes,
a
sir.
second? I think just based on the scale of this neighborhood, the location of the building and the sign, I'd ask you to consider that if our masonry base was put here, I mean, you have to consider sight lines, visibility. There's also cars here in a car lot that might be blocked, and he may take exception to that. I know he's not here to defend himself, but just something to consider that the mass of the sign will get much larger if you put the masonry base in.
Does the masonry base have to be the width of the sign?
Has to be at least 80% the width of the sign.
Oh, okay.
If you want
Just cover up the pole. That's all I'm
If you
saying.
want masonry around the pole, you certainly can you certainly can make that recommendation.
And I understand blocking the views, you know, because that is a wide sign now.
I will say the concern I have is if we're gonna go down that path and the applicant isn't even here to defend his sign, apparently he got it wrong. There's no excuse for that.
Right.
And maybe that's the price he pays, but the other option is to bring it back. Or approve it. Just throwing that out.
What's the consensus of the group here?
I'm fine with going forward as requested right now.
I'm fine with it too, as is. I don't think the sign is.
Yeah.
Looks bad.
It is disappointing though.
It is.
I agree.
I would be in favor of laying it over and bringing it back with the applicant here to defend himself.
Because it's really not going to change anything. It's already there,
Right.
right?
But we do have a motion on the floor.
What do we, does that be tabled then, or is it taken off, or how do we
You
do that?
table it, you can withdraw the second, withdraw the first, and set it, and then just have it come back on next month's agenda. You can table, motion to table. We'll put it on the agenda. Again, you'll have to do a motion to remove it from the table, and then it'll be up to the vote.
Well, what's the group want to do?
Should they take a vote now on what the motion is to approve it? And
No,
Good, then it won't go
that's their
back.
call, okay? You're asking me procedurally. If you want to postpone it, I can tell you how to postpone it. If you want, I've heard these three say, let's just go ahead and do it. I've heard Jim say, just since postpone it. I don't vote on that
Yeah.
matter. So you guys decide.
I've driven past there. I don't think without the base. Yeah, it's disappointing. I would like it to be code and everything, but again, I've been in the area for a long time and seen that sign for a long time. And even with the changes to it, the pole doesn't bother me. I mean, my bigger concern is somebody backs into it, but you know, that's not my concern either way. So I'm fine with how it looks now.
My concern is setting those precedents where, well, you let him do it, you know.
Each item stands on its own.
Mhm.
This is not a precedent for the next guy. Yeah, the next guy can stand at the podium and say, let him do it, let me do it. That doesn't mean you have to. That doesn't
I
carry
understand.
any weight whatsoever.
Call a vote.
Well, you got to confirm that
Oh.
everybody's read and
Oh, yes.
agrees with the finding of fact.
I'm sorry. Has everyone read and agree with the findings of facts?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now you can
Mr. Secretary?
call the roll.
Scott Heidemann. Jay Alms.
Yes.
Dan Pfluger. Jim Hankins, no. Shane Klinger.
Yes.
Jody Stromberg.
Yes.
John Danielewicz.
Yes.
4 in favor, 1 against, 2 absent. So
Goes with a positive recommendation.
positive record. Okay. Item 8. Discussion comprehensive plan update draft, transportation goals and objectives, transportation plan map. Carrie?
Yep,
You're up.
I told you guys I was going to bring little segments of our comp plan to you. Hopefully every month. Next month, we already have a big agenda, so no guarantees next month, but. So I've given you our transportation goal and the objectives to meet that goal for your consideration, and a copy of the transportation plan map. You can see there's what's existing and what's proposed, and the stuff that is proposed, it's already been identified in other plans or studies, either locally or regionally or by the state. So there's nothing new proposed in this plan that hasn't already been discussed at some level previously. But I'd like any input, you guys. have before I finalize this. It's a portion of our comprehensive plan.
Can I get a clarity of what the minor collector is? It's the yellow lines that are,
Yeah, and I didn't bring a definition with
Oh,
me.
okay.
But
no worries, thank you.
James, do you know? No.
We need a traffic engineer for that, so.
Yeah.
On the transportation goals and objectives, I just throw this out for consideration. Along 251, basically from Windsor Road or from Loves Park to Swanson Road, we've got intermittent service drives. But 251 belongs to the state, but the service drives are ours, right?
I think that there's still part of state right of way, but there's some agreements for us to maintain portions of it.
I would just, every time I drive through there, it occurs to me that that service drive would be more functional if it were continuous through. You're gonna have logical breaks at major intersections and things like that, but wherever possible, if it were continuous through.
Did the rest of you like that idea of adding an objective that we continue service drives along 251 where possible?
Just gotta think of the breaks.
And it doesn't have to be specific, we don't need to identify those places, just something to keep in mind when we're doing future road planning.
Sounds good.
I think the issue with the one that they did close on the east side was traffic. I mean, so many intersections, Forest Hills there.
Oh, you're
They
talking
close it
way
down,
up there.
yeah.
That's a
So
whole
many
other
people-
issue way up there.
Well, I think that's why it isn't continued now.
Are you talking more about, did the older part of the 251? Or up by Roscoe?
I'm thinking in terms of the whole corridor. And if a transportation engineer were to take a look at this, what they would probably recommend is that we have continuous frontage road. And instead of having little breaks where you could get through and cross traffic at every street, we would have collectors and signals there.
From a first responders
Mhm.
view, and I don't know if we're able to, but there needs to be some some ways to get across, because I'm trying to think, from 251 south to Copper, there's no way to, you gotta go all the way, you know what I mean? And if there was some ways to, and I'm trying to think what they're called, authorized turnarounds or whatever they're called, you know what I mean? I don't know if that's part of this plan, but it is
You're
talking
talking about between,
you know what I mean? If we
173
can add,
and
because
Copper.
even PD, I know, we have issues where you have to go so far. And the
Mhm.
same way north of 173. It's a long way to go to Forest Hills to get, so. And even if it was just half, it doesn't have to be 6 of them, just halfway.
It's a great idea.
yeah, I like that idea too.
I'm sure the guy mowing it doesn't like it. But, I mean,
Yeah, I'll work out a way to phrase that. I can't think of it on the fly, the best way to describe that,
Yeah.
but I know what you're talking about.
the authorized turnarounds or.
Yeah.
More comments? Discussion?
This is not an action item, right? Just discussion item?
Yeah. Yeah, just
A
discussion.
draft.
Yep, just to get some
Attorney
input
Crane, did you
before
have
I-
some?
put it
Nope.
together.
Input? Oh,
I have no discussion.
Oh.
All looks good. I mean,
Yeah.
good comments.
looks.
Derek,
There's
Does
a
this
lot
plan
going on
generally
there.
consider public transportation as well? Bus?
It's going to be mentioned as, the public service in the village, and we have the key transit destinations on this map with the stars where the buses go. But we don't actually plan for, bus routes. That's up to our MTD. We can, make it an objective to work with them to make sure that they service the areas where we need them up there, but that might already be in here. Yeah, number 3, continue to work implementing desired recommendations such as improving public transit connections to Machesney Park's employment destinations.
Is there any reason why they don't connect through Rock Cut? And maybe that's not our jurisdiction, but you know what I mean?
The
They
trails.
go halfway and then
Well, that's
existing
yeah,
shared.
that's the part, that's up to the park, but we
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to show
Okay.
where, you could get on a trail over here and end up all the way
Sure.
to Pierce Lake.
Okay.
I think at that point, there's a lot of roads you can get
Yeah,
on.
yeah, there is. Yeah, there is a lot of roads in there. I don't know where they identified that one. Okay. Any further discussion? No? Other business? Public comment?
I have one question if I might.
Sure.
Could I just ask about the sign variance earlier? I noticed that you took the vote. Does that mean that it's approved?
Can you,
Can
you're
you-
gonna have to stand up.
Can you stand at the,
You're gonna have to come to the podium, raise your right hand. Oh, sorry, raise your left hand. Solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes,
State your name and address for the record, please.
Michael O'Neill, 7907 Randy Road, Machesney Park.
Okay, and I assume you want to allow this, even though it's out of order. You
sure, sure.
I'm sorry,
No, that's all right.
I'm sorry. I just wondered, the vote that you took on the sign variance, does that mean that it's approved and it's moving
No.
forward?
We're just
Recommending.
the recommending body, and then it goes to the other boards. So there's 2 more meetings.
It'll go to a committee of the board in 2 weeks. Then it'll go to the full board for 2 readings. So this won't be officially approved until July 5th,
Okay,
if it keeps getting recommended for approval.
I see. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yep, you're welcome.
Sorry to interrupt
It's okay.
No.
Thank you.
I didn't hear an objection.
Oh, that's what I just wanted to use. Okay.
You're the chairman, you can do it.
Well, I didn't know what was that order.
Well, we had completed the item and we were past it, so it would be within your purview to say, no, you can't get up and talk. But
Oh,
nothing going on, so
Right.
you let him get up and talk, I get it.
I'm just gonna ask him his concerns.
Have him come back to the board.
Sir, could you step back up?
Yes.
Can I ask you what your concern is about the sign, or
Just interested.
just like
Just
and dislike? Okay.
I
Just-
mean, I'm okay with it. I think the base is kind of important, as far as if you had bad weather or like someone else mentioned, someone backing into it. I mean, it just seems like it's a really big top and just a skinny pole where maybe a stronger base would be more, would be better.
And I'm not sure about the structure, but I think mainly the masonry base is more decorative, more cosmetic than support.
And how tall would the base be required to
If
be?
it was conforming to our code, it should go all the way to the bottom of the actual
Yeah.
sign,
Oh, I see.
So there is some structural support there.
but it's mostly cosmetic.
I see.
For the most part, it's that pole that's holding it.
Okay, just interested.
And what's the date of the next meeting?
It's going to go to the Planning and Economic Development Committee on June 6th.
Okay.
It's 5 30th,
That starts at 5:30 if you're interested in coming to that meeting.
June 30th?
June
June 6th.
June
June
6th
6th.
at
Okay.
5:30.
Okay, then. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Yep, you're welcome.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Now let's stay.
Oh, we got one to sign.